Hey, it's time for another edition of the Cseekly Recap. I'm your host Csomm, and I'm here to go a bit deeper into the topics that I've covered in my shorts. The footage behind is from the game The Witcher 3: The Wild Hunt. Let's get this show on the road. The first story that I want to cover is all about Fallout, or in this case, Fallout New Vegas, that is, the remaster of that game. According to Chris Avellone, Bethesda Game Studios might not have the engineering ability to remaster Fallout New Vegas. Between missing source code, Obsidian's history, and Bethesda's track record with games like The Elder Scrolls Skyrim, this might be less about can't and more about won't. And I kinda think that Bethesda really is not interested in remastering this game because it's such a fuss. And if they are really working on the next Elder Scrolls, they pretty much don't have the necessary manpower. Not to mention that they're constantly fixing Starfield, or like they like to say, enhancing it. So where are you going to find all that manpower? Well, the only way that I can see this happening is they outsource it. Just like they did with the Oblivion remaster. But when we are talking about these remasters non-stop, the only question that comes into my mind is why would I pay more for the game that I already have in my library? Apart from some gameplay tweaks, which is something that always happens when you see these remasters, or at least the proper ones, the story, the character, the vibe, everything is basically the same. And of course they are going to improve graphical fidelity because it wouldn't be a remaster if you don't do that, because that's the first thing that they serve you, the comparison between the previous game and the current one that they have produced. So I think our boy Chris is a bit overzealous in the sense that he thinks that they are not able to do it. I think it's more on they don't really wanna mess around with that whole situation because it's just a huge fucking mess. Naturally, this is going to echo really badly for the enjoyers of Fallout New Vegas. But I say again, we have the game, we have the mods, and the mods are enhancing that game to no end, so I reckon stick with what you have, and not to mention it's free. Now, there was more that our boy Chris was discussing because there was this huge interview that he did. And the next topic is all about Fallout game being set in New Orleans. Apparently it was once discussed at Obsidian, and Chris still believes it has huge potentials. From swamps and flooded cities to a completely new atmosphere, this could be one of the most unique directions for Fallout 5. But the question is, will Bethesda actually go for it? And when I think about what was being said here in terms of the setting, and when you see how the previous games did the setting thing, I don't really think the setting is that important. All of those settings that we had in previous Fallout games seemed amazing, especially when you modify it by being ravaged by the nuclear holocaust. Which means that the setting is not a problem here. The main issue for all Fallout games was always the story, the characters, and the branching decisions or lack thereof. Gameplay features, mechanics, and let's say setting can only take you so far, and we've seen that with the settlement thing because yeah, it's an interesting gimmick in the beginning, but later on it just drags and becomes rather cumbersome. Not to mention that that particular aspect of the game could have been completely ignored if you so desired. So in that sense, I would mostly like to see from the next Fallout game how are branching decisions coming into play. How are factions interconnected with each other and what happens when you are into one faction and then you betray the other one. You know, stuff like that. And I believe this is the key point that nobody is really talking about. Everybody wants to see New Orleans or Boston or this or that, but nobody's talking about how my character is evolving and how the world interactivity and all the branching decisions can transform your playthrough. And I think that's the core thing here because if you have those things, you immediately have replayability. For example, remember Skyrim. You had none of these things, and your replayability simply came from you possibly trying a new build in the beginning, but then essentially everybody goes and plays fucking Stealth Archer or some shit like that. Not to mention, with the dawn of the anniversary editions or legendary editions, whatever the hell that was the name, with the ability that you could actually reset your abilities and then level them up continuously non-stop, you could play whatever you want. Which again, it's an amazing fantasy and it gives you so much power, but at the end of the day, you don't really have to restart the game. You can just sit in a pond, cast some kind of alteration spell like water breathing, and your alteration skill would go up and boom. you have gazillion points to allocate to other skills. Just like that. Very simple. Also, given the fact that Bethesda is working hard on the next Elder Scrolls game, I don't really think that we are going to see anything from Fallout franchise at least in the next 4 or 5 years to begin with. And, depending on how the next Elder Scrolls performs, who knows? It's definitely going to be an interesting situation with this particular topic. And speaking about remasters and all that stuff, well, Black Flag Remake is happening and we had tons of info about that particular game. The first article that caught my attention was all about that Black Flag Resynced is going all in on a pure story-driven experience, but that means no multiplayer and no DLC. Ubisoft essentially says the focus is entirely on Edward's journey, with new content and systems replacing what was cut. And while I don't really give two shits about multiplayer, the DLC that was released with Black Flag, which was all about playing as Adivale and I think freeing slaves or something like that, that DLC was really good, so I don't know why they decided to just cut it like it doesn't exist. I can somehow understand that they want to purely base everything on Edward, but again, why are you cutting really good content? I don't really understand. But that was me in the past, not understanding why they cut everything, because according to the new reveal that we had recently, they decided to expand on the stories that we had in the original game. Some reports say it's all about more interaction with Blackbeard and Steve Bonnet, but also they are introducing new stories with these officers, so I don't know if that's going to be enough to replace Freedom Cry. I guess we are going to see when the game launches. And speaking of that, Ubisoft is going all in on Assassin's Creed remakes, because apparently a second remake is already in development and more could follow depending on its success. Ubisoft is saying that these aren't simple remasters. It's usually rework gameplay, pacing, and systems to fit modern audiences, whatever the fuck that means. However, if you're going to price your games at $60 on launch, it's not a very cheap endeavor, especially if you don't add enough things to justify that price. With less content than original and a lower price than modern AAA games, but only for like $10 or so, you could say that this feels more like a strategic pricing than a good deal. And when I saw the price for the Black Flag Resynced, I just laughed my ass off, because why would I pay $60 for, I don't know, 90% of the same game that I already own and then maybe 10% of the new things? Again, this is just my prediction. I have to play the game in order to see whether or not that particular price point is justified, but as far as things stand, I don't think that it really is. And again, when they showcased what they changed in Black Flag, I didn't see enough to justify that particular price point. The combat looks samey, but they introduced that flashing parrying thing, which I completely dislike. Apparently, parkour was updated and upgraded, but again, I didn't see it much. Then they removed certain features that I thought should be in the game, albeit just refined a bit. Added these officers with their story arcs, so I reckon every single officer is going to be, maybe hour or two of new gameplay, but it's all about them. And we have a cat and a monkey on the ship, and that was their whole reveal. Again, there is a lot of things that I'm interested to see how they work. For example, are we still going to have that stupid syncing with the mission where you need to perform certain things like they told you that you need to perform? Which even back then was a pain in the ass, but for some reason they were sticking with it. How are we crafting new weapons or pouches for our gear? You know, those kinds of things that were actually very important when it comes to progressing through the game, but no, we didn't get any of these things, so I reckon it stands to see what's going to happen when the game launches. I don't know, I'm not really optimistic about this, and to be honest, I didn't really expect anything from this particular Resynced situation, but knowing Ubisoft, they will always fuck it up somehow, so we will see. I will 100% say that I'm wrong if I'm wrong, but so far I don't see any evidence that I might be in the wrong, so to speak. So again, I need to grab the copy of the game, do a review like I always do, and we will see what happens. I understand that many people are interested in Black Flag Resynced doing good because there are other games in Assassin's Creed universe that people would like to replay, albeit in a different graphical setting. For example, there is a lot of talk about remastering Assassin's Creed 2. So it's clear that Ubisoft has a lot of potential in that sense because the catalog of their games is huge. The question is, will they properly land it or will they mess it up? Because if they mess it up, you can say goodbye to all these remasters, or at least more than two, because we already know one is already in the works. I wouldn't say I wish them all the best, because I don't really give a shit what happens to Ubisoft, especially with all the stupid shit that they were doing in the previous couple of years. But, I'm not going to hate on things just because I hate the company. I'll just going to see what they produced and judge it like that. Because at the end of the day, I think it's the fairest thing to do. And speaking about judging a game, BioWare says the reason we haven't seen much of Mass Effect 5 is simple. They're too busy working on it. According to my gamble, there's not a lot of time for tease. But after 5+ years of silence, fans are starting to worry. Is this normal development or a bad sign? And knowing BioWare and all the things that were happening back in the day, because they really didn't know where to push Andromeda, or rather in which direction, I wouldn't be surprised they messed it up and now they're trying to wiggle their way out in order to produce something. Again, that's what experience is teaching me, so if they manage to change that, more power to them. But upon reading on this article, I can 100% say that this definitely isn't normal. You announced the game 5 years ago, and then we get absolutely nothing. I mean, if you want to take Elder Scrolls 6 into comparison, they announced their game 7 years ago, but at least you can hear Todd Howard saying certain things like bits and pieces, so you know something is happening. But BioWare people, absolutely complete silence. So naturally, you would be worried about what the hell is going on with that particular situation. I could probably talk about this, pulling stuff out of my ass. But until we get some proper explanation from them or some kind of a preview or blog post, your guess is as good as mine in that sense. We all know how important this for BioWare is, because if they nail this, that means that they will still exist. But if they don't, or at least if they do the same bullshit they did with the latest Dragon Age game, I think BioWare is no more. They'll probably get dissolved, absorbed by EA, something like that. Because having two failures, one after another, is definitely not good for financial side of things, because that's how EA looks at these things. Or at least that's how I would look at it if I was in EA's position. I already made a video what I would like to see in the next Mass Effect game. You can check it out if you want. But after 5+ years of development and not showing not a single thing, I'm kinda starting to get worried about the whole Mass Effect situation. I guess only time will tell if we were right or we were wrong. For BioWare's sake, I think it would be nice if we were wrong about the whole situation. And that's basically it when it comes to the news that I have covered this week. Thank you very much for watching and listening me blab about these things. As always, I encourage you to leave comments, because I read all of them and I'm very happy to interact there with you guys. And if you enjoy this content, consider liking it and subscribing for more discussions like this. And that's it from me. Until the next one.